I've gone ahead and hand sanded the other side of our knife here. Usually what I'll do is I'll do the wet sanding up to 320 on both sides before I go up to 400 for the dry sanding, and that's because it seems that the bottom of that wooden support block I have leaves little scratches, and then I can quick put some paper towel underneath for that final sand. And so then after that, I take this maroon Scotchbrite, it's 320 to 400 grit, and I'm going to use it to even out our grit lines. What it does is, once you start putting the strokes on, it's going to create a small cavity, a small depression, which is going to be the guide to push the knife, and then all the lines stay straight. It does fade this plunge a little, but I'm not too worried about it, and I'm not unhappy with what the end result looks like. So you can do this with oil, without oil, doesn't really matter. I like a little bit of oil. And you want to make sure that you change the pressure, so you make sure you get all the different areas. Like we said before, right here in front of the plunge is a tough spot to get, and near the tip. And so there's two ways you can do it. You can do it this way and use your pad this way, or you can turn it this way, but then you're going to get a lot of the tip's going to get caught when you push it in a lot. So I usually do it this way and then flip it over here for the final. Even though it creates that depression, you still want to be careful that you're keeping everything straight. You're not changing the blade angle. You do also want to be careful. Our tang, it's still very thin, has holes in it, so not applying a lot of force. Right now I'm getting in front of the plunge. It's working just fine. And we're going to keep doing that on all the areas until we get the fish hooks out, which we concentrated in the center. Now I'm sort of going for the tip. I'm pushing the blade up like this to get that tip area. Alright, that's looking pretty close. I might just keep it on for a little while longer, just get all those fish hooks out. That's the reason we went to all the way up to 400 instead of 320. This is a 320 to 400, which kind of usually means you can count on the rougher end of that, the 320. By putting the 400 grit finish, it makes it easier to drop down to the next grit and get all those fish hooks out. This is my portable bench, by the way. It's on wheels, that's why it's shaking a little bit. You do want to be careful you don't push it down so much that you come and you scrape it against your bench. That wouldn't be good either. I usually allot for one Scotchbrite pad per blade. You could probably use it for 2 or 3, but I just don't think it's worth the stress of dealing with worn abrasives. Also be careful you have clean strokes, you're pushing back, you're not shaking, you're just going to put more fish hooks in, and we don't want that. There, and that's just about it. Got our finish on there. You can still see the quench line. I've got a knife in the vise here. I put it between some leather for some padding. Even though it is clamped just on the tang, which will be covered with the scales, I didn't want to risk marring up the edges of the tang and have them squished, and it probably wouldn't be a big deal, but I just the added safety measure. So now I've got my little square sanding stick here with some leather backing, and we'll use the same strips we did for the hand sanding. And I like to go sort of across. I feel like it just cuts faster, and our grits are lined up this way so we can see those disappear. And I want to sand about maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch past where I plan on putting the scales. I'm going to be careful by the tip. You don't pull it back too far and it'll get caught, and you could push it and you might break your tip or bend the blade or something else bad. Okay, we've got all the scratches out. I'm just going to go a little more just to be sure. Now with the 320, on the 220 I kind of went like this, and this time I'm going to go so I can reference those deeper marks. It goes pretty quick after you get those initial belt marks out. Okay, now I'm going to take 400 in the same diagonal pattern as the 220. Finally, I think I'm going to finish it off at an 800. It is a little higher than the blade, but I like to finish the handle to about 1500, 2000 grit, which means that you also finish the tang up that high. So I like 800 because it's a little bit higher after we finish the handle to kind of come on and bring the 800 down, sort of blend it all together. And so this one, I'm going to go with the direction of my spine. Sometimes it can take a little while, especially, 400 to 800 is quite a jump, and it is less efficient to sand that way, so you could make it a little easier. You can go like this, establish an 800 grit on the spine, and then come back, and it should be quite a bit easier. Yeah, that was almost instantaneous. I do have some scratches there from maybe the 400 or 4, so I'm going to pay just a little bit of attention to that. Now at this point, it doesn't have to be perfect because you can always come back and touch this up. In fact, we're going to come back and touch this up. We have to after we do the file work.